So, good afternoon and welcome to another session on corporate governance. As I have told you, there are 10 parts in this particular corporate governance syllabus, and I will be taking the part 3, which is actually module 2, part 1. So, there are 10 parts. Request all of you to go through all the 10 parts. Then the entire syllabus of Calicut University pertaining to PUS 4C 22 corporate governance will be completed. I would request all of you to be with me. So today I will be dealing on syllabus module syllabus of corporate governance syllabus module 2 part 1, which we will be discussing on theoretical basis of corporate governance models, Anglo-Saxon model, German model, Japanese model, control model, Indian model, principles of corporate governance, OECD principles, stakeholders' obligations, essentials of a good corporate governance system, growth of corporate governance in India, and McKinsey Survey on corporate governance. This particular module 2 is slightly big, and that is the reason it has been divided to part 1, and then part 2A and B also is also there. Then only the module 2 will be completed. So let us go on to the different types of models of corporate governance. The Anglo-Saxon model. As I have already told you in the beginning of the slide that India was following the Anglo-Saxon model because it was from UK that this model has originated, and it is based on the corporate objectives set by the owners of the organization. Now when you take this Anglo-Saxon model, it was basically the owners or the promoters who had an upper stake in the company, and everything was decided by them. The shareholders are primary stakeholders to whom the organization is accountable. Of course, the shareholders appoint directors who in turn appoint the managers to manage the business. You would find here that this particular model has got the corporate objectives or the entire strength or power of this model rest on the owners or the promoters. It is not much of a democratic model, but it actually gives a favor to the owners of the organization. The objectives of the governance system is to set up rules and guidelines so that board members and executives work to maximize shareholder wealth. The board often has a limited ownership stakes in the company. Moreover, a single individual holds both the position of CEO as well as chairman of the board. And this system relies on effective communication between shareholders, board, and management, with all important decisions taken after getting approval of shareholders by voting. As I've already told you, since the power rests with the promoters, usually the other people like the the managers, I mean right from CEO onwards to down to the last employee or the managers, are usually accountable to the promoters. So you will find that the power mostly rests with the owners, and the system relies on good communication, which starts from the promoters onto the lower level, and all the decisions are taken by voting. German model, which is ideally the model which has been followed by India, because India, also being a British colony once upon a time, followed the Anglo-Saxon model, but later when we got our freedom, then they started looking at other models also. So Indian model of corporate governance is is actually copied from the German model. It is also called as a two-tier board model, as there are two boards. You would find the supervisory board and the management board. And this particular model is very popular in Germany, Holland, and France, especially in Europe. Usually, large majority of shareholders are banks and financial institutions. The shareholder can appoint only 50% of the members to constitute their supervisory board. The rest is appointed by the employees and labor unions. So you will find that as compared to the Anglo-Saxon model, German model is much more democratic. The model represents a well-developed stock market, strong investor protection, disclosure requirements, shareholder activism and takeovers, and shareholders are viewed as partners of the company. So here actually shareholders have bigger share, bigger power as compared to the Anglo-Saxon model, which consists of being the power being concentrated on the promoters or the owners, whereas German model is mostly democratic in nature. Japanese model, you would find here actually the main support or the power rests with the banks or the financial institutions. Also, it is called as Keritsu. The corporate governance is concerned with code and conduct of the board of directors who are selected on behalf of the investors. There is a supervisory board also, which is made up of board of directors and a president who is jointly appointed by the shareholder and banks or financial institution. The directors are authorized to govern the organization and also protect the rights of investors. However, all these the power rests with the banks or the major financial institution, which will be appointing or even removing the directors who run the organization. However, corporations are required to disclose a wide range of information to the government because the government has got a lot of stake in this, including financial data on the corporation on a semi-annual basis. Indian model. Now, the Indian model was actually a combination of the Anglo-Saxon, Anglo-American, and German models, and this has happened. This particular model came into existence because of the stock market scam called the UTI scam, the Ketan Parikh scam, Satyam scam, Harshad Mehta scam. And Indian model is slightly complicated because we have three different types of companies within the country. We have private companies, we have public limited companies, and we have public sector undertaking also. So the Indian Companies Act of 2013 introduced some progress and transparent process which benefits stakeholders, directors, as well as the management of company also. The most important stakeholder in Indian corporate governance is the SEBI, and the SEBI Act of 1992 has conferred a wide range of powers and authority to monitor the compliance of governance standards in listed companies. Corporate governance in India ensures strict and efficient application of management practice in the continually changing business scenario in India. In fact, you also would realize that we were the first country to come out with the Whistleblowers Act. And we were also the first country to come out with women in the board. At any cost, there should be a woman in the board. New provision for directors and shareholders are one or more women directors are recommended for certain class of companies. The maximum permissible directors cannot exceed 15 in a public limited company. Every company must appoint an individual or firm as an auditor. E-voting facility has to be provided to the shareholder for any resolution and is a legal binding for the company. Corporate social responsibility and whistleblower policies mandatory provision of the SAB also. As I've already told you, corporate social responsibility and whistleblower policy are very much in existence with the Indian model. Now we talk about the OECD principles. Now, the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development (OECD) released its first set of corporate governance principles in 1999. Subsequently, a revised version also has come up in 2004. However, this OECD has become a very important benchmark as far as companies are concerned and the countries are concerned, because they have to follow these norms which are given by OECD. And OECD has got a robust network among the countries of the among the countries and the country members. In fact, all the members of WTO, and there are 6 OECD principles also. So the first one talks about ensuring the basis of an effective corporate governance framework. Regulatory framework is important. The rights of shareholders and key ownership functions. Equitable treatment of shareholders, role of stakeholders in corporate governance, excellent disclosure and transparency, and the responsibilities of the board. Now, all these things have emerged out of the different scams which has happened in this country. For example, the responsibilities of the board was based on the Satyam scam. Disclosure and transparency was based on several other scams also which has happened in this country. So let us look at what are the essentials of a good corporate governance system. Now, good corporate governance is responsive to the present and future needs of an organization because this is definitely going to bring a good brand image for a corporate. And as a result, there should be a good exercise as far as prudence in policy setting and decision making in the best interest of the organization, including all stakeholders, are taken into account. There are 8 major characteristics of a good corporate governance system. Let's look at those. Rule of law. Good corporate governance requires actually a legal framework that are requires a frameworks that are enforced should be utilized actually. For example, they should abide by those rules and regulations or the regulatory framework provided by the government, and definitely these are all providing actually full protection for stakeholders also. The corporate is at an obligation to enforce the rule of law or comply with whatever rules and regulations of the country. Transparency is another one, in the sense, all the materials which are available should be disclosed in the proper time. It should be available for check. People should be able to understand that, and it should be easily available, as well as it should also be understandable. That is what it means. All the documents, most of the documents which are supposed to be presented. Then the next one is responsiveness. The organization should be quite responsive to the requirements of the shareholders or even to the stakeholders also. Whenever there are certain issues, definitely the organization should be able to serve the best interest of the stakeholders in a reasonable time frame also. Then the next one is on consensus oriented. Good governance results, there should be good consensus between the stakeholders. I mean, like for example, between the promoters as well as between the board, or between the board as well as between the managers, or between the managers and the employees. There should be a good consensus which should be prevailing in the corporate. Equity and inclusiveness is another one, where the organization should be giving an opportunity for all the stakeholders, equal opportunity to maintain, enhance, or improve the well-being of anybody without any bias. So inclusiveness, it is including everyone. At the same time, it is equal also. Equality has to be maintained. Effectiveness and efficiency is another one, where it says that whatever that you do to meet the needs of human, technological, financial, natural environment, all those should be producing actually favorable results and for the benefit of the stakeholders. Accountability, those people who are appointed in positions of the corporate should also be accountable as far as the decisions are concerned, as well as complying with the law is concerned, especially the CFO, the CEO. They should all be accountable, even the directors, accounting firms which are connected to the corporate should all be accountable to each other. And participation also, there should be a participation between all the groups within the corporate, right from the employee onwards to the promoter to the board to the vendor to all the groups. In other words, I would say all the stakeholders, there should be an excellent participation that should prevail in the company. Now let us look at what is the growth of actually corporate governance in India. Corporate governance has grown in India. It has grown because of major scams which has happened. Especially, the first of the major scam which happened was Harshad Mehta scam. Now, before that, there was corporate governance, but it was under the Indian Companies Act. But after the Harshad Mehta scam, the government appointed actually the Confederation of Indian Industries to create actually a, an independent autonomous body to take care of the investors. And that was actually the SEBI Act of 1992. Of course, SEBI did a commendable job by coming out with different committees, like the Kumar Mangalam Birla committee, and then the Narayana Murthy committee also was there. However, even after that, also there have been several scams which has happened, and through every scam, the corporate governance was being tightened in this country. Now, as far as corporate governance is very important in India because there are around 20 million shareholders, and it is one of the biggest markets emerging, the biggest economy. So naturally, it is important that it has to be preserved very well. And it started off in 1996 with the Confederation of Indian Industry, took a special initiative on corporate governance, and it was basically to protect, develop, and promote the interest of investors, whether it is a minority investor or a majority investor, and to have transparency within for the business and accountability shown by the managements. SEBI, as I've already mentioned you, 1992, the government of India brought in actually SEBI Act of 1992 and conferred a statutory, autonomous statutory powers to it. Since then, SEBI had introduced several stock market reforms, and it still remains as a watchdog, looking at how companies are, especially listed companies, how they work on the stock market, and strict corporate governance norms are there for all the public listed companies. Now, Clause 49 of SEBI Act talks about the director board, the independent or the promoters and audit firms. We will be learning about Clause 49 of SEBI in detail, and every company which is a which is a very public limited listed company in the Indian Stock Exchange has to require actually the SEBI clause of 49, and even new companies which are going to list also should do that. As a result, there is a lot of control being exercised by SEBI as far as the Indian stock market, as far as Indian companies are concerned, which was not there previously. Otherwise, the Harshad Mehta scam would not have happened. But now, even a minority trader also, when he wants to sell shares, there is no insider trading. Everything has to be done digitally, and those things are always being monitored. The settlement takes place immediately. So you would find that the SEBI 1992 Act has been a paradigm shift from its old tendency or the old picture of keeping it aside for tomorrow. It has become actually today, and it is bent on improving the corporate governance, especially for investors in India. I would also like to tell you that what is the benefit of actually corporate governance. So McKinsey, I'm sure all of you know that, a very excellent management group, especially who conducts actual financial audits and mergers, takes on corporate audits and all. They have suggested actually, they have conducted a survey on corporate governance and came out with the following points. They say that corporate governance is the heart of every investment decisions. For example, any shareholder who wants to, or a promoter who wants to invest in the stock market or buying a company, they look at, the first thing that they look at is whether corporate governance is followed by that company. Similarly, like investors also look at actually corporate governance and put at par with the financial indicators like profits while evaluating investment management. If they feel that the corporate governance is excellent, they don't mind actually investing. It is equal to at par with the financial indicators like profit and loss. Okay, and the next one is an overwhelming majority of investors are prepared to pay a premium for a company that exhibits high corporate governance standards, and investors wanted to have reforms to rebuild the integrity of the system. So, according to the McKinsey survey, it has been found that those companies who follow corporate governance are ranked higher as compared to those who are not. Other than that, McKinsey survey also talks about the market regulation and infrastructure, all those things, and apart from that, it can reduce actually corruption. Uh, so McKinsey was mentioning that those companies which had an excellent corporate governance had lesser corruption. Of course, there are indicators, where certain cases it has not been, but corporate governance, if required, can actually build up an excellent ethical policy also, as far as organization companies are concerned. Specific policy also priorities shareholder rights, improving accounting standards, promoting board independence, tighter enforcement of existing regulations. Similarly, shareholder equality or protection of minority shareholders, equity, equitable treatment for shareholders, all those things are very, very highly valued as far as investors are concerned. So McKinsey has concluded that if a company has got corporate governance, naturally investors rank that company to be better as compared to that of any financial indicators also. So we are right now completed actually the module 2 part 1, and I'll be shortly coming to take you on to module 2 part uh, 1 and 2, sorry, part 2, which has got two A sections, because two sections A and B, because this is reasonably a slightly bigger module, and it requires actually three parts to be. This module 2 has to be in three parts. So if you have got any clarifications or suggestions, you can always reach out to Naipunya Business School or email to me at hod@mbnimit.ac.in. Thank you very much. Looking forward to your participation in the next class on module 2 part A. Thank you.